What's your favorite scary movie?
Welcome to the final Spooktober edition of For the First Time in Forever, the show that aims to fill the gaps in all of our spooky watch lists. Now, last week we took a look at a film considered by many to be the pinnacle of cinematic horror. Or not. No, we had a look at the 2006 remake of The Wicker Man starring Nicolas Cage, and you can check that video out by clicking the link in the description below. But this week, to close out Spooktober, what better way but to visit one of the most iconic and influential horror films of all time, Scream. Wait a second. I am going to be talking about spoilers for this film, so consider this your warning now.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers?
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy, that's right. I like that movie. It was scary.
Well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
So, you got a boyfriend?
Why? You want to ask me out on a date?
Maybe. Do you have a boyfriend?
No.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
What did you say?
Wes Craven, quite easily one of the greatest horror directors to have ever lived. Craven initially hit the scene with his debut in 1972 entitled The Last House on the Left, but he really made his stamp on the world of horror with his 1977 gory classic The Hills Have Eyes. For the next few years, Craven would go on to make relatively mediocre horror films borrowing on his already established tone. However, all that would change when in 1984, Craven stepped back into the spotlight to deliver one of the most iconic horror movie villains of all time, Freddy Krueger. With A Nightmare on Elm Street, Craven had flipped the script, delivering the world a brand new approach to horror, making audiences physically incapable of falling asleep in fear that Freddy seeks them out. After the release of A Nightmare on Elm Street, critics and audiences were in agreement that there was no way that Craven could better himself. Lightning could not strike twice. But in 1996, he did just that. The horror genre, or more specifically the slasher subgenre, had begun to head a bit of a decline by the late 90s. Throughout the late 70s and 80s, slasher films had dominated the horror genre. Whether it be Michael Myers stalking you around suburbia, Jason Voorhees slicing and dicing his way through teenagers, or even Craven's own concoction, Freddy Krueger, slipping into your dreams and killing you violently when you least expect it, slasher films had most definitely proven to be a popular formula. But now that formula had grown old, it was stale, it was unoriginal. So what did Craven do to try to breathe new life into it? Well, he took the criticism head on. Scream kicks things off with quite possibly one of the greatest horror movie openings of all time. We meet Drew Barrymore's Casey alone in her house, about to sit and watch a scary movie and prepping the popcorn, when all of a sudden...
Hello?
What ensues is a fantastically orchestrated set piece that immediately states Craven as a bona fide master of suspense. A prolonged sense of inescapable dread from the constant phone calling to the imminent and encompassing threat that surrounds Casey wherever she goes, leading to a shocking climax that has Casey being savagely murdered and her body hung and mutilated. It's iconic for many reasons, one of which is that it starts this film off like a wild firecracker, instantly setting the tone for what is to come. But also, for those watching it in 1996, it's a very unexpected opening. You see, Drew Barrymore, at that point in time, was a recognisable name. She would be enough of a draw to get an audience in. Not so much now, but hey, fame is fleeting. And knowing this, the studio deliberately advertised Barrymore as kind of the lead of the film. Little did they know that Craven had taken inspiration from the true master of suspense, Alfred Hitchcock, subverting our expectations similar to 1960s Psycho, where Hollywood star Janet Leigh dies unexpectedly in the film's first half. So for Casey to die almost instantaneously gave audiences the immediate impression that no one is really safe. But Psycho wasn't the only film that Craven was inspired by. In fact, Scream plays out like a giant homage to horror movies past and present and the tropes that they seem to follow religiously. Like I said, Craven's plan was to stage a seemingly simplistic high school slasher movie, but with one fundamental twist. Everyone deliberately refers to examples of horror movies and their tropes to influence certain decisions. Now, there have been a few recent meta-horror films like The Cabin in the Woods, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and the criminally underseen and underrated The Final Girls. And all do a great job, but Scream takes the biscuit all day, every day. The character of Randy is a prime example of this. In one tremendously written scene in a video store, Randy explains exactly how the movie is going to proceed, outlining the fundamental structure of a horror slasher movie and ridiculous tropes they fall into, such as remaining a virgin, certain lines of dialogue that hint towards an imminent death, and that everyone could be a potential suspect. All of these things the film abides by also. He even watches sequences of John Carpenter's Halloween, critiquing the decisions of Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode, whilst he himself is making those exact same decisions and mistakes. And Scream also has a very macabre and warped sense of humour, especially towards the latter half, once Billy and Stuart are revealed to be the masterminds behind Ghostface. Matthew Lillard is a prime candidate of this, showcasing his character to be a complete nutjob, reveling in the death and sadism as he emulates the horror movies he's fascinated with, urging himself, Billy, and Sidney that they must all follow the rules. And of course, Craven can't help but to sprinkle in a couple of Easter eggs for horror movie fans. You might notice that Billy's surname is Loomis, named after Donald Pleasance's Dr. Loomis from Halloween, or the sneaky appearance of a janitor dressed identical to Craven's own creation, Freddy Krueger. The level of detail even goes down to Marco Beltrami's score, which is a fantastic score, but score aficionados may notice that there are very subtle hints that Beltrami has clearly taken from John Carpenter's own score from Halloween. And just like the fact that it has been so meticulously written and directed, the performances are also, for the most part, spot on. Neve Campbell makes for a great central protagonist who you can root for and feel genuine fear when she comes under attack. Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard are hamming it up for sure, but given the tone that had already been set at this point in time, I think it works. The only two characters who I didn't think really added a great deal, aside from a couple of laughs here and there, were David Arquette as Officer Dewey and Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. And I don't think they were bad in the slightest, but in regards to what Craven and screenwriter Kevin Williamson had intended for those characters to satirize, I didn't find it as effective as others. Also, and this bears absolutely no effect on the movie itself and is entirely my fault, but because I had already seen Scary Movie before seeing this film, there are obviously a lot of things in Scream that Scary Movie has parodied and spoofed on, and one of those things is David Arquette's character of Officer Dewey, who I couldn't help but see the entire time as Officer Doofy.
I got poopy.
Did you just say that you went poopy?
Yeah, it was good.
Could not shake it from my mind in the slightest. Craven pulled off what many thought was impossible, creating a second iconic horror film that has absolutely stood the test of time. Both him and Williamson were able to deconstruct the slasher subgenre, reassemble it, and then wind up creating an almost pastiche of that subgenre, and at the same time, making a really compelling and gripping slasher thriller. Horror fans will eat this up, and I think even if horror isn't your cup of tea, I think anyone that can appreciate filmmaking and is a huge nut for meta movies and kind of that self-referential type approach, I think you're really gonna get a kick out of Scream if you haven't seen it already. That, and I get the impression that this is gonna be immensely rewatchable. I saw it yesterday at the time of filming this, and I already want to rewatch it again. So, after watching Scream for the first time in forever, it is well and truly God tier. Anyway guys, those are my thoughts on that movie. Let me know, have you seen Scream? I think the majority of the responses will be, yes, we have seen Scream. How have you not seen it already? That's the point of this series, I guess. But let me know, do you regard it as one of the all-time horror movie greats? And as I'm sure some of you are aware, we are currently on the road to 300 subscribers. We're not that far off now. I think, again, at the time of recording, we're about 20 subs away, so hopefully we can get that going soon. But if you are watching this video, you have enjoyed yourself, but you are not yet subscribed, what are you doing? Please click that subscribe button, and I promise you, you will not regret it. And of course, Spooktober is officially over right now, but next week is Bonfire Night, an anniversary in lieu of Guy Fawkes' attempt to blow up the Houses of Parliament. So, if only there was a movie that I hadn't seen that can directly tie into that event. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please make sure that you click that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All the links to my social media accounts, my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and my letterbox are all in the description below. And if you haven't liked the video, what are you still doing here?